Hello everyone, and welcome to the Knowledge Pool, your source for everything regarding the rules of Magic the Gathering. Today we'll be going over the new and returning mechanics for the new Commander set, Commander Legends Battle at Baldur's Gate. Let's begin. First off, there is like a sub-theme of cards which are gates, which are the land sub-type that first was used in Return to Ravnica. Now here, because we are on Baldur's Gate, there are many different gates, and there is some underlying draft gate synergy and also some cards for gate decks and commander. Then we have two returning mechanics, a new mechanic, and a essentially twist on an already existing mechanic. So for the old mechanics that return, we have Adventure, and if you are not playing during Throne of Eldraine, you probably don't know how this mechanic works. That's where it first debuted. It always was a creature with a split box, like Seahag from the set, which has the normal mana cost on top and the power toughness ratio, and an effect that is split into like a book. So how Adventure works is essentially when you get to cast this card from anywhere, obviously other than the exile, will go over this in a bit. You either, let's say Seahag is in your hand, you either choose to cast Seahag as a creature, or you choose to cast the Aquatic Ingress part, which is an instant. Now obviously timing restrictions apply as normal, so you can only cast the creature part on your main phase if your stack is empty, and the instant part whenever you cast an instant. Now if you choose to cast the instant part, because the creature part obviously does resolve as a creature and you do the ETB effect. If you choose to cast the instant part, you put the card as an instant on the stack. So the adventurer cards are always the front type, which was usually creatures, and then on the stack they are whatever type of card you choose to cast. So if you choose the instant part, it's an instant on the stack. And then you do the effect, and after it resolves, if it resolves, it goes to exile, and then from there you have the option to cast it again as the other part, because the adventure mechanic specifically states that you cannot cast the adventure part from the exile zone. So the adventure is either instant or sorceries that are put on creatures and artifacts in the set specifically, and allow you to essentially have multiple choices on cards. So for example, for Seahag, you have the option to either cast it on your main phase as a creature, or in any other place that you could cast an instant as an instant. Then if you cast as an instant, it goes to exile if it resolves, and after that you can cast it from the exile like it goes in your hand, but only the creature part. Now in the set also artifacts have adventure. So for example, Monster Manual is an artifact and has an adventure. The artifact side is a sorcery part, and I think all of them will be sorceries. So you cast the sorcery part, it goes to exile, and then you can cast it as an artifact. It goes the same way, but it usually was only creatures. Now it's artifacts and creatures that could have advantage on them. So they're essentially kind of like model cards, but you can get both sides of value at the same time. Now, the reason I said if it resolves it goes to exile, then you can cast it for the non-adventure part, is because if the spell gets countered, like with a counter spell, the creature will actually go to the graveyard as normal, because it has to fully resolve to be put into exile on an adventure. Also, if, like Seahag, the option has targets, and all the targets are illegal at the point of the spell resolve, then the card will also go to the graveyard. So it's a pretty interesting and weird mechanic that was pretty powerful for standard. It was even a whole deck during Throne of Eldraine, and here it's supported across all 5 colors, but it's centered around the banned tricolor. The second returning mechanic is returning unchanged, and that's Myriad. So Myriad is a triggered ability that you can see on creatures, and it reads that whenever the creature with Myriad attacks, for each opponent other than the player is attacking, so other than the defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of that creature that stopped attacking that player on Planeswalker they control, and then at the end of combat you exile tokens, and also you can stack myriad, so if a creature somehow has multiple instances of myriad, it will trigger once per instance of myriad. So let's look at the card, for example, like Legion Loyalty, which is 8 mana enchantment that reads creatures you control have myriad, so all creatures have the ability. That's for reference. So the way myriad works is essentially an aggro-centric mechanic that allows you to attack all players at the same time. And important things to know about myriad is that the tokens already come into play tapped at attacking. So if there was an effect that will trigger when a creature attacks, it actually doesn't trigger on the myriad tokens because they're already attacking. It's like kind of Kali of the Vast. So you need to know that. Also, if you have effects that will allow you to create multiple tokens, you get to put tokens per defending player. So let's say I have a doubling season and I attack with a creature with myriad, I get to make 2 tokens per defending player. And because whenever a creature enters the battlefield tapped attacking, you get to choose whether they attack the player or the player they control. If, let's say, the defending player we attack with the tokens had 2 planeswalkers, we can attack a different planeswalker with each of the creatures because we get to choose as they come into play. So myriad is very good with token doublers, and it's pretty much a very easy mechanic. Keep in mind that the tokens are exiled at the end of combat, so after damage we have the end of combat step where a delayed trigger that was created from the first trigger of myriad goes on the stack and will exile the tokens. So essentially the tokens go away, but we've already done the damage you need. And if you have effect that could sacrifice creatures with it, that trigger of the stack or before the end of combat, you can take. Next we have one of the newest mechanics. I say newest because it's essentially a weave of a node mechanic and another multiplayer mechanic. So we're talking about the initiative here. And you gain the initiative in 2 ways. If the initiative is not in play, you need to play a card that gives you the initiative. And usually are cards on EDB, like the White Plume Adventure, which on EDB makes you take the initiative. What happens now after the initiative is in play? So when you have the initiative, you have a trigger at the beginning of your upkeep that whenever it's the beginning of your upkeep or you take the initiative somehow, you venture into the Undercity. Now, Undercity is a new dungeon and can only be accessed through the initiative emblem. But also the initiative has the Monarch thing where if you were dealt combat damage, only combat damage by another player, that player takes the initiative. So it's like Monarch, but instead of always being the same where you draw a card, you get to take the initiative again, which means essentially you venture into the Undercity. Now, important things here. Undercity is a new dungeon which has very specific rules for entering it. So if you see, the Undercity card can only be entered by venturing into the Undercity, which is meant only on the initiative. So in order to venture to the Undercity, if we play a regular venture card that allows us to venture into the dungeon, we cannot venture into the Undercity. Now, the interesting part is what happens when we take the initiative and we're already in a dungeon other than the Undercity, which are the 3 other dungeons from the D&D set. If that happens, and we're saying, let's say in the Lost Mines of Baldur we take the initiative, we cannot have 2 dungeons going on at the same time because they're in the command zone. So we keep on venturing on the dungeon we're already in. So if we're on Lost Mines of Baldur and we take the initiative, or at the beginning of your upkeep we already had the initiative, we keep venturing into the dungeon until it's over. If though we have not ventured into any other dungeons and we take the initiative some way, we have to venture into the other city. So we go to the secret entrance, which is we essentially wrap for a basic land, we put it in our hand. If we were obviously in the other city already and we take the initiative again, we just venture into the other city. And very interestingly, if you notice, Undercity says you can't enter Undercity unless you venture to Undercity, but once you're already in the Undercity, all the other venture cards from the AFR set work as normal. So all you need to do is venture to the other city, and then every other mechanic that uses the venture mechanic could be used on the Undercity. So This is like a whiff on Monarch and the regular Venture cards from the AFR set and the Monarch, so the Conspiracy 2 set, kind of mixed together in a sense that the initiative is like an emblem that never leaves the game while it's in the game, and we don't know the complete rules, but I assume it goes like Monarch, so if someone leaves, the other player takes the initiative. I plan to do a video on Monarch because it's a very interesting mechanic, so probably combine the two when the time comes. But generally it's a little bit complicated at first because you need to know what you're doing. If you're playing just Commander Legends draft though, you don't need to worry about, because I think only cards that reference Venture are the take the initiative cards, so you will be venturing into the Undercity. And the finally new mechanic is obviously the mechanic that will make the draft work. In the original Commander Legends set they were partner mechanic with generic partners, so it could be used with the partners from 2016. In this set, because they don't want to even mix more the pattern pairings possible, they thought of another way to do, and yes, it's the first time we can have backgrounds and the enchantments in the command zone. Now, this is essentially a two-part mechanic. So we have the background, which are always legendary enchantments that do something to your commanders, like Council of the Absolute is a 1 black legendary enchantment background, which is the commander creatures you own get +3/+3, have flying, death touch, and worth 3, and you have to sacrifice a creature at the beginning of your action. So, important things here. How do we put this on the command zone? Because if you notice, they don't have the text where they say they could be your commander. Now, if we look at one of the new monocolored pieces like Volatile Scholar, we see, other than the wall of text, that on the bottom has choose a background. So, backgrounds can only be our commanders, or in our command zone to be more specific, if we have as another commander a creature that reads choose a background, like Volo. Otherwise, we cannot run the background, let's say, with a partner commander. It has to be specifically the choose a background commander, so the choices are more limited. Now, the way they function is exactly like the pattern mechanics. So if you're playing a regular commander, you need to have your regular commander with choose a background, your background, and 98 cards you. Then you can go more than that or less of that. It's fixed. On the draft, it's the same for the minimum card limit, those to count, if you choose to run. Also, you can only choose one background, so you can only have two cards in command zone with the background, one the creature and the other the background. Now, interestingly enough, the backgrounds all mention commander creatures you own, and that's really important, because own means that they started in your deck or in your command zone, specific scenario. So that means that if I have a background round, because we need to have the background of the battlefield faction, and our opponent steals our commander somehow, the commander will have the ability from the background, because the background measures commander creatures we own. Now, if the opponent steals the background enchantment, that will affect their commander, because you own means the you is the controller of the card. So if our opponent steals one of our backgrounds, it will affect their commander as normal. So overall, a pretty interesting mechanic. They try to limit the ability of the partners and essentially make pairings for the draft that are not way too exaggerated. And you can only go up to 2 colors, because all the choose background creatures are monocolored and all the backgrounds are also monocolored. Also, if they happen to have the same color, the background, the creature you choose with choose a background, they have that color identity. If they have different colors, you have the 2 colors identity represented by the pair. Also, because it is a commander draft and you have to obey the color identity rules, there is the essentially wild card for the set, like Prismatic Pipers was for the original commander set, which is the faceless one. And it's very fun because it's a 5 mana 3/3 legendary enchantment creature background. So you can use 2 of them, because one could be the background and one could be the legendary creature. That's why they made it that way. And you get to choose a background. So this is essentially if you manage to draft a really cool background you want to play, but you have no choose a background commander, you can say, okay, I'll play Faceless one, this is the color I choose, and the background is the second color I choose. Or you could run two Faceless one, and one would be the background, the other would be the regular one, but it still works. So that's the whole thing with the new background rulings. Also, because it's a D&D set, we have flavor keyword. For example, on Beckoning Will-O-Wisp, we have Lure the Unawary, which doesn't mean anything, it's not a new mechanic or a new keyword for the game. They are called flavor keywords, it's just to essentially see the flavor of the card, what it does. It doesn't do anything rules wise other than the triggered ability reads. And of course you get to roll dice like the regular AFR set, which you would check what dice they tell you to roll, and you roll the dice and it works as you would expect. Sometimes you had advantage too, so if they say you roll two dice and you keep rolling the high one, that's the advantage roll. And these were all the new and return mechanics for Commander Legends Battle at Baldur's Gate. Overall, pretty interesting take on the how to draft mechanic without using the partners. We also get to have enchantments for the first time in the command zone, but only if we also have a creature. And the mechanics are pretty simple. I think the take the initiative mechanic is a little bit needlessly complicated, because they wanted to use a new dungeon that was better for multiplayer, but they didn't want to also have to carry over to other formats, and they went with this weird route where you need to play cards that give you the initiative instead of venturing. So it will be overly complicated at first, but I think this video taught you how to make sense of that. Thank you all very much for watching, and see you in the next video.